the Biden legacy. Obviously, he just stepped down. This is a initial take on his legacy, but take it away, Dad.
The first draft of the Biden legacy. Obviously, you don't really know a presidential legacy until, years have passed and you see what's the result of the presidential initiatives. So just look at this as a rough first draft. Like most presidents, the Biden legacy is a mixed one. Look at Lyndon Johnson. He achieved the greatest domestic reforms of any president other than Franklin Roosevelt: Medicare, Medicaid, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But balanced against that was what was the very negative thing that Lyndon Johnson did, Sam.
Vietnam.
Exactly. Or even Richard Nixon did some phenomenal things in foreign policy, treaties with the Soviets, opening the door to China. And of course, that's balanced against what?
He's a crook.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Exactly. So, I'm not saying Biden has those kinds of extremes, but my point is, if you look at most presidents, their record is always a mixed one. And the Biden record is a mixed one. On the positive side, in foreign policy, it was Biden and Biden alone who put together the coalition of the West that stopped Putin from quickly conquering Ukraine and moving on to undermine America's national security by threatening our European allies. It will go down as one of the great presidential foreign policy achievements, and Biden's policies have helped keep Ukraine alive for 2.5+ years against this, supposedly invincible Russian military machine. Nobody gave Ukraine a chance to survive like this, and it was due entirely to Biden. Plus, it was too late, but after the election, we got at least a limited ceasefire and a limited hostage release based on what Biden had laid out as a framework in May of 2024 and had worked assiduously to achieve. It was something of a bipartisan achievement because Trump's envoy joined in at the last minute to help achieve it, but it did happen on Biden's watch. Also, on the positive side, Biden's stimulus package reversed one of the worst recessions in American history and brought the American economy back from recession. I understand inflation was high during Biden's first couple of years, and I'll talk about that, but it was high all over the world. It was a result of the adjustment from the pandemic. And he's brought inflation down to somewhere between 2 and 3%. And by the way, even in the highest year of Biden inflation, Trump lied about it, saying it was the record inflation. It wasn't close to the record inflation. It was just over 9%. The record is 23.7%, almost triple the Biden recession. As I said, you can't reverse price increases without driving the economy into another recession. It's called deflation, but he has brought prices down to a reasonable historic level. We have record job creation, historically low unemployment, a booming stock market, real wages have begun to go up, and international authorities have recognized that the American economy is the envy of the world. It is the strongest economy of any economy in the free world. Also, on the positive side, he has more domestic policy achievements than any president since Lyndon Johnson. I'm not going to go through all of them, but examples are the stimulus bill, the CHIPS bill, the infrastructure bill, legislation to reduce drug prices, also executive order on that, the tax and climate change bill, even the small gun control bill. I want to talk to you again about accuracy and bias in the media. Ground News is a website and app that I use that pulls articles from all over the world and organizes them by story. With Ground News, you can compare how different outlets cover the same story, complete with context and visual breakdowns of the sources. You'll see details like their political bias, reliability, reporting practices and ownership, which is critical. These ratings are created through three independent news monitoring organizations. For example, take the story, quote, Congress formally certifies Trump election win, unquote. There are over 600 news sources for this story, with 38% of the bias being from the center. It's also great to see that 73% of these sources are rated as highly factual, and 11% of them are independent sources. Take a look at the bias comparison, which gives you an AI summary for the left, center, and right sources. Examining the headlines further, sources from the right focus on terms like certifies, exhausted Democrats, and Democrats cling, whereas the left headlines focus on terms like a good day for democracy, peacefully, and routine. The blind spot feed highlights news stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. You know how much I care about combating misleading information. Ground news helps you see through misleading narratives and stay informed without being overwhelmed. So go to ground.news/Allen, ALLAN, or scan this QR code to subscribe. My link saves you 40% on their top tier Vantage plan, which I use to access all their features. That's only $5 a month in a world where news moves fast and the truth is hard to find. It's important to be using ground news to see the full perspective. Plus, by subscribing, you're directly supporting my work. Now, on the negative side, it is certainly true that Biden was very late in addressing the issues on the border, did not really address them in a significantly effective way until late in his administration. In addition, of course, he was never able to develop a simple, compelling message to explain and convince the American people of his accomplishments. They largely remained unknown, and his approval rating, which is very important for a president and is part of his legacy, was extremely low for most of his presidency and extremely low at the time he left the presidency. He also was unable to unite his own party. He was viciously and publicly and openly attacked by leaders of his own party. He became the only elected nominee to be forced out of re-election right before the party convention, making him a one-term president. And it's very difficult to build a strong legacy when you're only a one-term president. So, it is a mixed legacy, and it's really for history to judge, not for us to make a final judgment right now.
Like you said, there's still a lot of time to make that final judgment on Joe Biden.
Yes, a lot of things are still very much up in the air. And of course, Biden gets a lot of blame, even though these are not our wars, for two wars bursting out on his watch.
Right.
It may not be his fault, but as Herbert Hoover, a man who knows, once said, a president gets the credit for the sunshine and the blame for the rain. And there was a lot of rain during the Biden years. Republicans have also criticized Biden and his administration for saying they deliberately deceived the American public by concealing Biden's cognitive decline. 2 points about that. One, we're not going to know that for some time until the records of the Biden administration are released. That's speculation at this point. Two, we don't know the extent of any of Biden's cognitive decline. Yes, he had a terrible debate, but since then, he has carried out the duties of his presidency in an extremely capable and competent way. He's made several successful, very arduous trips abroad. Someone in severe cognitive decline would not have been able to do that. And of course, it was on his watch and through his ideas that we got the ceasefire in Gaza. So I think any judgment about that is speculative and way premature. I'm not willing to go on one side or the other. I'm just saying we need to suspend judgment.